Hello, welcome to Take 10 on Tuesdays with the Tennessee Tribune. We have a very special guest today. This is Judge Sheila Calloway, who is the judge of Juvenile Court in Davidson County. And she has just completed the first year of the 8-year term to which she was elected. So we want to talk about what has gone on in this first year that you've been sitting on the bench. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about juvenile court, which is my passion.
Yes.
And which is something I love to talk about.
Okay.
So I'm excited about being here today. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Very much so. Well, let's start at the beginning a little bit. When you first went in, I think one of the first things that you did, the juveniles, and we're talking young children, generally up to age 13 or so.
Yeah, we deal with up to 18.
Up to age 18?
Yes.
But rather than put them in jumpsuits and have them handcuffed or shackled at their feet, you're treating them more like children and having them dress in khakis and polo shirts and looking like children.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yes.
And why was that an important change?
That is one of the definitely big changes that we've made in juvenile court. There has been a lot of research that's been put out recently that talks about shackling of juveniles, and the indiscriminate shackling of juveniles does more harm to them in their psychological issues than it does any good.
Oh, wow.
And so one of the first things that I decided is that we were no longer going to shackle our children when they come into the courtroom. You know, first and foremost, it's not necessarily a security risk. We have security officers.
Right.
So we have warrant officers, we have security officers. So we have officers that can handle if a child starts to get disrupted or something. They can handle that child in the courtroom appropriately without that child being shackled.
Right.
And so if there's absolutely no benefit for shackling and there's no need for it, then I made a determination that we were not going to do it. I am proud to say that the state of Tennessee and the Judicial Conference has decided that they're going to make that a rule in juvenile court.
Oh, so they're following the precedent that you've set here in Davidson County.
Yeah, I will say
now going to
absolutely.
Great.
Yes. I don't think they're following me. I think it was something that was already on the table and it was being discussed as I was coming into office. And it's something that I knew that was being discussed, and it's something that I knew that there were good reasons behind it. But as the juvenile court judge, I could go ahead and do it whenever I decided to do it.
Yes.
And so we do not shackle youth that come into the courtroom anymore.
Okay.
And I'm very glad about it. And what the if I can explain to you how juvenile court works.
Yes.
I am the elected judge.
Yes.
And underneath me I have 8 appointed magistrates.
Okay.
And the magistrates are like the assistant judges, and they hear all the day-to-day cases. And so most of the cases that are being heard with the juveniles and are coming in front of the judge are actually going in front of a magistrate. And so the magistrates have said that since we don't shackle the youth anymore, the courts actually run a lot smoother.
Is that right? That's great.
Right. They used to come in with chains and shackles and orange jumpsuits, and they'd sit in a row together, and they would become rowdy.
I see.
And what it is, it's a mindset thing.
Exactly.
And so if you treat them like they're on a chain gang and like they have nothing of value, nothing of worth, except for an orange jumpsuit and shackles, that's how they're going to behave.
Right.
And so what we're treating them like is the children that they really are. And that's how they behave. You know? They come into the court, they're orderly. It's a very welcome, open change. And so we're excited about that.
Oh, great. That's good to hear.
I'd also say we hold, and we have a detention facility within our center that we contract with a private provider. When I started, we were under our provider was G4S.
G4S. Okay.
One of the things that I was hit with as soon as I got there is that their contract was going to be up at the end of the fiscal year, and we needed to get a new contract or a new provider.
So end of fiscal year 2014?
Correct. So we got a new provider July 1st.
Okay.
As we looked and did the RFPs, we have to go through the metro process of RFPs.
Right.
And there ended up being 2 different agencies that wanted the contract. we ended up contracting with a newer company called Youth Opportunity Investment.
Are they based here in
They're
Tennessee?
actually not based here. They're based out of Indiana.
Okay.
But we did our research between G4S and Youth Opportunity Investment. And, when you look up their YOI's website, one of the things it says is they want to have purposeful detention.
And what does that mean?
Well, to me, it's something that if you have to come to detention, we want to make it something that you can learn from.
Okay.
And it's something that you can gain skills and do the things that you need to be able to transition back to your home.
Okay.
It was less, G4S was more of a security kind of.
And not really making it, even though it's a negative situation, but not trying to make it a more positive
Absolutely.
situation.
YOI is completely about rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
They're about making sure that the kids have visitation with their parents as often as they need to.
Oh, really?
Yes, they're about bringing the family together.
Mm-hmm.
If a parent cannot do visits during the regular scheduled visitation time, they'll work with that parent to make sure that they can come whenever they're able to come.
Mm-hmm.
They want to make sure that they provide everything to help rehabilitate the children, and when they get out of the detention facility, that they're going into the community and they're doing more positive things.
Okay.
And so that was one of the things that drew me to them.
Mm-hmm.
But when they came to visit our facility with G4S, they were in the orange jumpsuits, and they were like, "No, that's the first thing that we say have to go."
Oh, really?
Yes.
So they
And
were
so
on board
they
with
were
the changes. Great.
They were totally on board with the changes. I don't think their company owns jumpsuits.
Right. Oh, good.
And so, the other facilities that they use have always had khakis and khaki pants and polo tops. So it was a definite welcome change. And I talked to the CEO of the company, Michael Dempsey, and we kind of laughed because the officers, and they don't even call them officers, they call them, I can't remember what they call them, but they're the officers that work in the detention facility were saying about the behavior of the children, that they were so much better, and it was such difference and in the way that they were acting and behaving in the detention. And he was like, what they don't recognize, they're different too.
Oh,
Because when you relate to someone, you relate to them how you see them. So if you see them in orange jumpsuits, you relate to them in that way.
Right.
Versus if you see them in the school uniform, you relate to them differently.
As a child.
And
so you are seeing a difference then,
Absolutely.
since this Youth Opportunities has come in.
Absolutely. They're
And
doing a great
runs
job,
it.
but yes.
Now, how many children are actually coming through the court system in a month? Let's or a year, however that you're seeing.
A lot. Now let me also explain. We do more than just delinquency cases.
Okay.
So when people normally think about juvenile court, they think about the juvenile delinquencies cases. Right. Those are the kids that have committed crimes. We also do the children who are what we call status offenders, and those are crimes for children because of their age, such as running away from home.
Oh, I see.
Unruly behavior.
Unruly
smoking
behavior
at the house.
At the house, in school.
In school.
Okay.
Tobacco smoking, loitering during school hours. Those are all status offense crimes because of the age of the child.
I see. Okay.
And so we deal with those. And so those together, the delinquency and the status offense cases are probably about a third of the cases that we handle in the court system.
Okay.
We also handle cases where parents are alleged to have abused or neglected their children.
Oh, so those come before you
Those
as well.
come before me as well.
I thought they went through family court.
No, well, we're kind of a family court, but we're just a family court that's based on juvenile issues.
Okay.
And so we hear, those are probably about a third of the cases that we hear. And most of those cases start with the Department of Children's Services when they're getting called out to a situation where a child is being abused or neglected. And so that goes through our system. What we decide on those cases is what should happen to the child, what's in the best interest of the child, whether they should go into a foster care system or whether they should remain with their parents and their parents go through some type of program or another relative. And so that's a third about the cases that we do.
Okay.
The final third of cases that we handle are all custody and child support parentage cases.
Oh.
And so we handle unmarried parents who need to decide on parenting time, visitation issues, custody, who should be the mother or the father have custody, and child support.
Oh, I see.
So we do about a third of those cases as well.
Okay.
So overall,
you are seeing a lot of children.
we see a lot of children. So
Yeah.
it's difficult to categorize how many cases we hear.
Right.
Any given week, the magistrates will have, depending on what type of docket they have, they could have 100 cases a week.
Oh, wow.
And it just depends. The kids that run through our juvenile detention facility, I would say we probably have about 400 that come through a month. Detention facilities.
And those are that's all Davidson County.
That's all Davidson County. That's all Davidson County. And our detention facility is only a pre-trial detainer facility. So if a child's not sentenced, once they are found guilty, they're not sentenced to go to detention. They might be sentenced to do something else, but it won't be going to detention. So we only hold children in detention who are waiting on their trial dates.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so we probably average about 20 kids in detention a night. Anywhere between 20 and 25.
Right. How
and
many are you seeing? Are the number of females rising?
Not at this point, not
Good.
really. It's kind of at one, a couple of years ago we were seeing more females. Now we may have, I think we have one or two in detention now.
Okay.
And that number, I don't think it's been over 2 females in detention for a while.
Good.
So,
Okay. All right.
yeah, we're hanging it together.
Now, tell me a little bit about when you also came in looking at how some of the people were assigned and looking at, and I think now what you have are more caseworkers who look
Absolutely.
at the child's entire life. So school, family, friends, whatever else may be going on in that child's life. So
Absolutely.
How did you make that change?
So we've done a tremendous amount of restructuring down there, and we're still in the process of doing some. People tell me you can't get it done right away. You've got 7 more years. Just slow down.
Okay.
But we've done a lot of restructuring. When I first started, and the reason I knew this is I had been in juvenile court since 1998, first as a public defender, and then from 2004 until I announced that I was running for election, I was one of the magistrates.
Oh, I see.
And so I had been there. I was familiar
with
with it. Knew the staff. Knew the people that were there. One of the biggest complaints from the staff were morale was really at a pretty low level when I started, and people didn't feel as if they were doing the jobs that they went to school for or what they were qualified for, and they were kind of just doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
And on the other hand, what we were also doing, we were doing a lot of one size fits all for kids and their
looking at the individual,
and not
looking at the individual.
Absolutely,
Yeah, right.
absolutely. So we were more dealing with what they were charged with or what the reason that they came to court. And so if it was a child that was on a delinquency and it was a drug charge, we were automatically just saying, okay, you need to do drug treatment and whatever. Right. And that was all. We weren't looking at the entire individual and the entire child to see why it is that child was on a drug charge and what was underneath there. Okay. And so I looked at that and looked at the combination of, so we've got staff that's not really operating under their gifts of what they can do, and then we've got clients that we're not really given the best services that we're given. Okay. And so we've got to do some changes. When I was campaigning, one of the 3 things that I said that we needed to do to make a difference in juvenile court was, number 1, we were to prevent problems from happening. Right. And so we were to be more proactive and do things more on the front end. And there's so many reasons why. One of the things is we have jurisdiction over those abuse and neglect cases, right? Yes. And the studies show that if a child is abused or neglected between the ages of birth and 5 years old, that they have a strong likelihood of ending up in the delinquency system. A lot of it has to do with their brain development and their inability to conflict resolve conflicts because of the abuse.
They're so young, yeah.
Yes, and they didn't, they lose some brain cells, they lose some brain development between those ages, and they lose a lot of the things that if you're not abused and not neglected, that you gain automatically just by learning. They can't learn those skills.
Right.
And so when they're not learning those skills when they grow older, they start acting out, they're not able to communicate, they can't resolve conflicts, and they end up doing delinquent things.
Oh.
And so we know that, but we weren't addressing that.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do is get on top of those cases now,
right,
and make sure that we're providing good services so that we can prevent the problems from happening later on. And so that was the first problem that I said that we needed to work on as juvenile court. The second thing, I wanted to promote the positive potential of everyone that comes in the system. That includes my staff and all of the children and families.
Oh, wow.
So we got to do more to promote positive potential. Everybody has the potential to do positive things.
Exactly.
If it's promoted, if it's explained, if they're given the foundation to do that. And so that's what we want to focus on as well. And then the third thing is that I wanted to make sure that everyone we're pursuing fairness.
Right.
And so that everyone that comes through the system pursuing fairness and hope.
Great.
That they still have hope.
Right.
And that they still feel that they were felt no matter what happens, that they were felt fair, that they feel like they were dealt with fairly in the court system.
Okay.
So that was my big dream. And so the things that we've done to make changes all line up to those things. So we restructured the entire court.
Right.
So we had an intake division that was run really by some of our probation officers, our people that went to college to do social work and to work directly with children.
Right.
And so they weren't doing that. All they were doing, they were sitting behind a desk, and when somebody came in to file a petition, they were helping them figure out how to file it and whether it was a good petition or not.
Yeah, and
they
really, living up to their potential.
Absolutely. They were not living up to their potential, and they were becoming frustrated. And so, it showed in our customer relations and our services, as people would come and say, I need help on this petition, and they would, and they, they're very smart, and they, understood the law and understood things, and they would say, well, that's not a good petition, you don't need to file this. And so it would become contentious, and it just was not a good situation. And so I've made that division, my intake specialists, they're all clerical staff, and that's what they want to do, and that's what they are trained to do.
Right.
And so they do all the petitions.
That works well.
And it works well. And so I've pulled all the probation officers out of that division. And so it's all intake staff that does that. They get to go to court now. And so because the probation officers were in court filling out the decrees and filling out forms. Again, not living up to their potential.
Right.
The clerical people now get an opportunity to go do that work and not have to sit behind a desk all day long typing petitions. And so it was a win-win for the staff.
Good. Okay.
So once a case comes into our intake division, and it doesn't matter what type of case it is, whether it's a neglect dependency or a delinquent case, excuse me. Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, once a case comes into the intake division, then it goes to a brand new assessment team that we have. And this was totally made from scratch.
Oh, okay.
We have
you've created this assessment
we've created
team.
this assessment team. The head of the assessment team was a supervisor in another area, and that area was struggling.
Okay.
And so we pulled her out and pulled her into this new area, and it is thriving.
Wonderful.
They are doing extremely well.
Great.
They love each other. The staff does great work, and you can see them reaching their potential.
Great.
And so what the assessment team does is they take the cases from the intake division, and they have 45 days, 30 to 45 days to make contact with the family, the child in the family that has a petition against them.
Okay.
So they will talk to whoever is involved in that child's life.
I see.
And talk to them about what the child's needs are and what the child's strengths are.
Oh, okay.
And so it's not just, this is an at-risk child because this, that, and the other. But this is a child that is in need of these types of resources because of these issues. And, this is also a child who likes these kind of things and would do great in this area.
Wonderful.
And so one of the things that the assessment does as well is it looks at the entire family. So we don't just focus on the child, because if you just focus on the child and you're not looking at the, things...
The environment.
Then you're not really doing much.
Right, yeah.
And so, we've had cases where the assessment team comes back and the mother's struggling because she's got 2 jobs and doesn't have time to be at the home with the child, and she's a single parent and she just needs help.
Right.
And if we got that help for her, and she wouldn't necessarily have to have that second job, and she could be home to help structure that child, then he may not be running away anymore.
It makes a big difference.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And so what our assessment team does is that they see the entire picture, and they get everything that's going on with this child.
Great.
And then they make a full-blown report, and it has what the things that we think that the child needs and the family needs.
Oh.
And so then they pass the case on to our new team, which is called our Support Intervention Accountability Team.
Okay.
Support Intervention Accountability. They were all probation officers previously.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so their title has changed and their focus has changed.
Right.
And so instead of as probation officers, what all they would do is they'd get the court decree for a delinquent child. He's on supervised probation. He's got to take this class, that class, and do this amount of public service work. And they were just kind of enforcers to make sure all that got done.
Nothing creative. It's just...
Nothing creative.
And that one size fits all.
One size fits all. And they were the ones to enforce it and to make sure it got done. If it didn't get done, they'd come to court and file a violation, so they didn't do it. And so that's what their sum total of what they were doing. And so now they're having to change their mindset and change what they do and provide what the assessment says. This child and family are in need of this and that and that and that and the other. They're the ones that help provide that family with those resources, help to connect them to the things that they need to get done.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so for that team, we have a new team, brand new team, called our STAR team, which is Statistics, Training, Analysis, and Resources.
That goes right to my next question, which is how are you tracking all of this to make sure
my
that
STAR
it's working?
team.
Okay.
My STAR team.
Okay.
And
what is your STAR team reporting so far? I know it's still relatively new. But
it's still relatively
new.
One of the things that they are focusing on now, the reason that the SIA team uses the STAR team is that they are building, a better database of resources.
Okay.
And so
that's important.
That's very important. So they're going out to the communities, and I'll say the reason is, back in our one-size-fits-all system, we would say everybody go to this agency and get drug treatment.
Right.
And that agency may be good for boys between the ages of 14 and 16 that had drug problems. But it may not have been good for girls who were 17 who were having, drug problems, something else.
Right.
And so it was everybody just go because that's what everybody uses. And so what they're doing is they're expanding the resources. And so if this SIA officer says, I got this assessment point, this kid is likes art, he is 14 years old, he likes to smoke marijuana, his dad is in jail, his mom is struggling. So they have all these issues, and so they can go together, look through all of our resources, and says, well, we got this program through OASIS that is an art building program that does dual diagnosis stuff. And so then you can use that program.
Great. Okay.
And so it gives them a better, I guess, ability to find what fits for that child and that family.
Oh, wow.
So,
right.
But anyhow, so the question about the statistics, what we've done so far is we are focusing right now our pilot to make sure that we're doing all the assessments and things right. We're doing all the children that come through the system who are 12 and under.
Oh, wow.
And so those are the ones that are getting the full-time assessment.
Children,
the young children. So because we picked that age group because we can follow them longer.
Right.
And then we can really track and see what kind of changes have been made.
Okay.
So far, I can't say that I believe we have a lot of successes. Like we have individual stories on how families have really been touched and helped just from the from the time that the case comes from intake to the assessment.
Okay.
I'm not even worried about the SIA part of it, but just from that part where families have said, this is great, you really helped us, and we're getting a lot of positive reactions from the families that we're working with.
Okay.
So,
that's good.
Yeah, it's very good. I can't say much about recidivism or anything because we hadn't been doing it long enough
to really show
those rates. But those are things that we
come back next year.
I will come back next year
and talk about the recidivism and where we are.
Absolutely.
But before we ended today, I wanted to ask you, what's next? What do you see as sort of a next step? What are you hoping to do in the next year or so?
Lots of stuff.
Okay. I should have known. You've already done a lot. Being more proactive from the bench is a whole different story than we usually hear.
Absolutely.
And all those changes. But can you give us...
I can.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, before we go to that, there's another team that we have that I developed as well. It's our community youth court team.
Okay.
And so that team, we have now 4 schools that we have partnered with.
Oh, really? Which
are? Antioch, Cane Ridge, McGavick, and Whites Creek.
Okay.
All 4 of them have youth courts.
Oh, really? Within the school buildings?
Yes.
Wow.
And so we have court there.
Okay.
And we use all of the students are the participants in the court. So it's an actual real juvenile court case. So a child at Cane Ridge picks up a disorderly conduct charge. And instead of coming down to the courthouse, paying court fines, going through, the petition process, we reach out to them and say, would you be willing to participate in youth court? Oh. And they have to agree, their parent has to agree. They have to agree to plead guilty on that charge. And so they find guilty, then the students, that child will have a 2-team students that represent him. And then there'll be 2 student attorneys that represent the interests of the school.
Right.
They'll have a clerk that's a youth. They have a court officer that's a youth. They have a jury made of all their peers.
So they're
so
other high school students.
All the high school students. The only adult we have, there's an adult that serves as the role of the judge, and that's an attorney, a local attorney, and then there are attorneys that help train the attorneys that are doing the arguing.
Okay.
The student attorneys. So we have an attorney that, guides them through the process. And so they make their arguments about, the child and, what should happen to him, what type of consequences he should have based on the behavior.
Right.
It goes in front of the jury. The jury goes back and deliberates, and they come back and they announce their decision, and the judge approves the decision.
Wow.
We've seen so many wonderful things from the youth court.
Oh,
wow. I give examples about how if it comes to court, we might put you through. Now we will put you through our SIA team, but there's so many things as a judge that I don't know about the kid, and I don't know how I would decide. But there was one case where a child was he was in front of the youth court team because he was not going to school, so it was a truancy case, and they figured out that he wasn't going to school. He wasn't connected to the school. He just didn't have any interest in school.
Right. Okay.
And so he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't connected. So, he'd come and go when he wanted to.
Okay.
And they found out that he loved soccer.
Oh.
And because his grades, he couldn't be on the team.
Oh, so.
And so what they did was they talked to the coach before court. And the coach said, yeah, he can be a manager on the team. He has to be here every day and help out in the team. And then if he goes through the year, manager will put him on the team next year.
Oh. And improve his grades.
Improves his grades. Right. And so what happens? And that was what they recommended.
Right.
The judge, that was me. I was the judge at the time. I approved that recommendation.
Right.
So he goes to school every day because he's part of the school now.
Right. That's great.
And so it's those things that encourage me. So in the future, I would love to have a youth court in every school, and that requires more staff and more volunteer attorneys, of course. But it's a restorative justice method that helps the peers help their peers to get back on the right track without having to go into the I guess, the stigma of having to go to court.
Yeah, and you probably also have young people who become interested in becoming lawyers and judges.
Absolutely.
And coming into the legal system and looking at that as careers. So
Absolutely.
it is a win-win in many ways.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things I would love to, I'm pushing to see in the future.
All right.
Of course, I want to move from our pilot to a full-blown assessment for every child and family that comes to the court system.
Wow.
We have some restrictions now with our custody in child support cases because they're under a separate grant, and so we can't mix and mingle.
Oh, I see.
So that division, they do their own kind of mini assessments. They're not quite at the level of the full ones. But I want, at some point, every child and family that comes through there to have the opportunity to go through the assessment process.
Okay.
Because for them, it gives them tools on how to make their family whole.
Right. And that's important.
And that's important.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day. And so, even like the cases like of a delinquency case, and we do an assessment of a child, and it turns out that the case is dismissed in court because they weren't guilty or they didn't have the evidence to support it, whatever the reason, you still can give this assessment to the parent and say, this is just to help you. You don't have to do it.
Right.
You don't have to, but this is an assessment for the things that we found that would be helpful for your family.
Great.
And if they like it, great. If not, that's on them. But we've done our part in trying to help the family to do better.
Yeah, and it sounds like families will really accept it, and because they want to do better.
Absolutely.
And they want better lives for their children.
Absolutely. They don't want their children having to come down to court and other things like that. So I think it's a very helpful thing.
Yeah.
I think it's I'm sorry.
No,
I think it's a great opportunity. We are now more in the community, and we're doing more community stuff, and that's important so that people can say, I can get help from juvenile court. Right. It's not a place where it's just miserable and I'm getting punished and they don't care about me and my children. We do. We really care about the children and the families that we work with, and we want everybody to succeed.
It sounds like it, and we'll have to get you back to talk more about what's going on in the next years as you stay on the bench.
I would love it.
Judge Calloway, thank you for being with us today. I've learned a lot about juvenile court, and hopefully we'll talk more. I'm very interested in the youth court and like to learn more about that, and perhaps that's something that we can feature in the future.
Well, I love it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. We've had Judge Sheila Calloway, who is the judge for juvenile court in Davidson County. Thank you.